when you talk about this idea of curriculum development, perhaps going into something like Chat GPT and having a dialogue with Chat GPT, and a lot of, there's a lot of fear about Chat GPT. And I'm like,
I love
listen,
it.
just play with, okay. So here's like, it's
Yeah.
prompting. It's like, you are a trainer or an educator at a community financial institution. So you have to prompt it, give it the perspective and the context. I want to develop a curriculum around improving the member experience with these particular criteria. This is the purpose of our organization, and really get the more clarity that you can provide to the large language model, the better the output is. And I think that's where a lot of people get frustrated with, large language models or Chat GPT, whatever the AI is. It's because they're not providing enough clarity. It's like, we got to think about this like almost and it just sounds kind of odd, but another quote unquote human being, even though it's not, because if we don't provide clarity to a human being, they're going to be left with confusion. The same is true here, but then that's a shortcut. And then from there, it's a matter of just capturing it, i.e. with video, but thinking about I'm going to make up a word here, the replicability of it, so that it's almost like you do it once, but then it creates value over an extended period of time. So this is an interesting thing that I'm probably have to give a
I
little more thinking
I
to.
use it all the time. I love it. The danger, and I think that people have with it, is that they use it as a Ask Jeeves. I've just dated myself quite a bit, but they use it as an Ask Jeeves. They copy and paste, and then they don't, their output isn't great. The response isn't great. People can tell it's a computer written thing. They're done. But if you use it as a tool that you can build into, and then whatever your output is, that's where the human comes in. I'm not going to take whatever my output is and just copy and paste it. That's where my expertise comes in, my human experience comes in. I'm going to craft whatever output I got. And then at that point, I'm utilizing the technology to build something better.
I appreciate the Ask Jeeves. That's really good. And you're right though. It's we have to take the output and then provide the additional human oversight, the editorial perspective. I think about, so my son, he was running for class president, and then now he's running for National Junior Honor Society president, and he had to do a speech. And I said, okay, and he's starting to, and I think it's about, you just train the mindset. So he knew exactly what we were going to do from past experiences. We were going to go into Chat GPT and we are going to start prompting it. And it's, I'm trying to just teach him how to just think prompts first. He's in eighth
Mm-hmm.
grade. Because I think if you develop the skill set now, it's much easier. Because as we were talking before we hit record, I asked when you were born, and you were late 80s, I was early 80s. So we're still coming from a similar context of time. But that perspective, growing up in the 80s, growing up with the internet, being around in 1994 when it launched, is going to directly influence how we're thinking today, versus someone like my son who's in a completely different mindset. To now he's thinking, okay, well, I can go to Chat GPT, and we prompted it to write literally a speech around his campaign, so his purpose, if you will. And then the output it was good. It was a good start,
Exactly.
but we took that and honestly took about maybe 20% of what the output was, but it was enough to get us going instead of just having to stare at a blank piece of paper. And where are we going to begin with that, right?
A lot of teachers, there's a lot of talk right now in education about what are we going to do about Chat GPT and cheating and all of the different things that they have to look at it and say, like, is this Chat GPT, or is this just somebody who has great grammar? Did they use this phrase because they used Chat GPT as a tool, or did they copy and paste the whole thing? And instead of being afraid of them using Chat GPT, it'd be really great if they started teaching it, just like you did with your son, and say, okay, I want you to write an essay, and now I want you to edit that essay. And we could be doing the same thing in the financial world, but there's just nothing happening yet with that. If
No.
there were classes that could teach you how to use Chat GPT, it would be amazing. And tools out there later that can help. A quick example of that, I'm helping a member who's upset because they were making a payment and they didn't realize we don't front load the interest, and they still had interest due. And that's frustrating because they think, oh, they're charging me extra interest, but I need to explain to them the difference between daily interest and front loaded interest, and how a not-for-profit institution is actually in their favor.
Mm-hmm.
I could sit there and write a whole essay on that. I worry about being condescending, not having enough clarity. I pop that into Chat GPT and say, explain simple interest in 3 sentences. And I have now something I can pop into my email that explains it clearly. And then all the human around that is me empathizing,
Yes.
explaining what's going to happen next. But I use that tool to build it.
That's such a practical example, and I'm glad you brought up education because going out and working with other teams, other organizations, other senior leadership, executive, even boards of directors. One of the things that I'm asking right now, and I'm identifying these patterns because if I think back to the work that I was doing in the early 2000s, which was still kind of the dawn of the internet, we were discussing like, well, have you ever used instant messaging? Have you ever been in a chat room, for example? And a lot of the times the answers were no. And then you go from the early 2000s to 2008, 9, 10, 11, 12. Then well, have you ever used social media? What do you know what that? No, I've never done that. Okay, well, go try that. And then it was like 2014, 2015, 16. Have you ever opened up an account or applied for a loan at a fintech or a neobank? Well, no, I haven't. Well, go try that and tell me what that experience is like. And then here we are again with this whole Chat GPT large language model. And it's almost like history is just repeating itself. And I'm asking the question, have you ever just played with it? And I would say 70 to 80% have not. And I think that is the scary thing because that's limiting the future growth potential. But what's driving a lot of that is the narrative, if you will, in the quote unquote mass media. Because when I ask the executive team, well, what's your perspective on Chat GPT? It is literally what you just said. They're hearing that, oh, well, this is what students are going to use to cheat on their test. And I'm like, no, this is just the next kind of like the iteration of a calculator. This is just a tool.
I was just about to say that. It's just like statistics. You can have, when you take a statistics test, you get a whole page of cheat sheets because it's all formulas that you have to know how to read.
Yeah.
It's an open book test, but you still have to know how to use the book.
Right.
So the Chat GPT is in no way cheating because it's a tool that you have to know how to use.
Yes. Well, I did have an executive at a workshop tell me once though, well, that's a bad analogy because they said that, well, I don't have anyone who works here, and he was high up executive. I don't have anyone who works here who knows how to calculate simple interest. And I kind of popped back and I was like, dude, I don't even know how to do that. And I've been in the industry for 20 some odd years. If I need to calculate something, what am I going to do? I'm going to go Google it and just put it into Google and let the I don't need to think about that because the tool is there. It's like, give me what's a good analogy? Give me a shovel or give me a backhoe and tell me to go dig a hole in the ground. Well, if you want to use a shovel, that's fine. I'm going to go take the backhoe and be done in about 5 minutes and you'll still be digging that hole. And so I don't know what it is that holds people back from wanting to learn. This is kind of my existential crisis right now because I'm very passionate about just education. Always have been, because I feel like there's a lot of Socratic knowledge that is 2,000-3,000 years old that stood the test of time. You've got Socratic discussions. You've got Socrates defining his wisdom as I know nothing. And now it's like we have truly the knowledge of the entire human race at our fingertips, and they can have somewhat of a conversation even through a GPT model. But that gets us the question, and I just don't have the answer.
They're waiting. They're waiting for a vendor who says, we can do all of this for you, who's using the same technology. But they're waiting for it to be put in this pretty little package. We're going to have so many programs out there soon that are going to help us do things like automating member experience response letters. That's going to be a thing. We're going to have click and drag member education tools. We're going to have, we already do it with chatbots. That's a packaged Chat GPT right there.
Yeah.
So they're just waiting for the technology to be packaged in a way that's, I guess, more digestible. But we have the raw code. We can go right to the site and use it.
That's a good point. We have the raw code. Harvard Business Journal just released an article. They didn't release one. That sounds so bad. They just published an article because I get the physical magazine and I have a collection of them, but just published an article on basically how we are all programmers now and how you have GUI or graphical user interface and the ability to just drag and drop and build things. But what that comes back to is almost how we started this entire conversation. It's the ability to think and to think critically and to come back to first principles and putting people at the middle of that, the center of that thinking, and more specifically, the purpose of why we're doing what we're doing to begin with in the first place. Because if we lose sight of the people and if we lose sight of the purpose, then kind of what's the point at that point? So my question to you as we wrap up here, as you look out towards the future, what are you feeling most hopeful about? What are you feeling most excited and energized about when it comes to the future of member service and member experience?
I am really excited about the technology that's out there that we can embrace. I'm also excited because I feel like we're at this turning point right now where we're about to get a lot of really new, cool stuff that we can't even imagine. And so I'm really excited to see how those are adapted in the financial industry. I'm also excited because I feel like I'm in a company that's just the right size and the right mindset to start embracing some of these early and having a lot of fun with them as they come out and try new things. And because I love change, I'm excited to learn about all these things and see how I can implement them. And I'm also at a point right now in my career where I get to be, making some decisions and deciding, do we go here or do we go there? And which ones do we pick first? And so I'm just really hopeful for all the different things that are going to come out. Yeah. And also embracing some of the stuff that's already out right now. Next week, I'll be at the MAX conference in Spokane for the Credit Union Association. And I'm excited to see what the vendors there have right now.
Yes. And I think that's the thing. When you look out at the future with hope, with optimism, that's what you're going to find. Your perspective of the future right now in the present moment will directly influence the decisions, the actions, the thinking that you're doing in the present moment, which will then be the path to the future that you go and create. And so it's this role of why knowledge, why education, why mindset is so critically important.